Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Parshat Korach. We have 8 practical lessons to apply to our lives from this Parsha. Here we go. We start at the very beginning of the Parsha. Vayikach Korach. It says that Korach took, but it doesn't say what Korach actually took. It doesn't say, and Korach took this, or Korach took that. So what is Vayikach Korach? Rashi says, Lakach et atzmo letzad echad. He took himself to one side and be against Moshe Rabbeinu. The Ramban says, Lakach etza belibo lasas mashe saper. He took counsel in his heart to try to figure out exactly what he should tell people in this story. All of these and all the commentaries try to give an answer of what did he take. I think, despite all of those commentaries, and of course we should learn them and understand them, there might be a very simple understanding to the words where you don't have to project something beyond what the Torah actually says. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, Daf Kuf Yud, actually talks about Korach's great wealth. Rav Levi says that he talks about how many donkeys were necessary just to carry the keys of the treasure houses of Korach. He had so much, and it says there were 3 jewels that Yosef hid in Mitzrayim, and one of them was given to Korach. It even says Osher, Shamor Labavel Raso, that wealth comes to someone, and it says that the wealth comes to someone negatively, and Rish Lakish says that it's talking about the wealth of Korach. Korach was a person who had a lot. He was blessed with great wealth. That's what we know about him. What does that have to do with this? The Pasuk Kohelet said, and it led to bad. We know that Kohelet also says in Hey Tet, Ohev Kesef, Lo Yisba Kesef. A person who loves money, a person who loves having things, will never, ever have enough. That could have been who Korach was. Korach was a person who had so much and all he wanted was more. He was a taker. He wasn't a giver. Vayikach Korach. Korach just took. He took. Wherever he found, he took. And that was his flaw. The Mishnah Pirkei Avot in Heitet Zayin identifies Korach Vadato as a machloket shelo l'shem shamayim. This was not a person who wanted to be the Kohen and lead Am Yisrael for good, positive, spiritual reasons. He wanted it for himself. He wanted the honor. Perhaps he wanted some money that could come along with it, the gifts that would come along with it. That was Korach's flaw. And the Torah identifies that with 2 words, Vayikach Korach. He was living his life looking to see how could he take, instead of living his life thinking about and looking for how can he give. We have a tradition that, a baby is born, and when a baby is born, his fists are clenched together. And we know that little children, the greatest challenge is their selfishness and is their desire just to take care of themselves. And we try to teach them over the course of their lives to give, to be mevater, to give up and give to other people. And sure enough, when we prepare a person for burial, the Chaver Kadisha, the burial society, opens their hands up. The idea is, I came into this world this way, where I was a taker, only for me, and I leave this world with my hands open as a giver. That is what we have to strive for and learn from Korach's mistake. Vayikach Korach. He was a taker. That led to his entire downfall and to all of his mistakes and all of his struggles. That's, by the way, probably why all of his property, etc., it all gets swallowed up in the ground, because it was his wealth and it was his taking that was the problem. Lesson number 1. Let's learn from that and internalize the idea that we should be waking up every single morning and thinking about how can we give to others instead of how can we take for ourselves. Moving on to lesson number 2, again, staying right at the beginning of the Parsha. The Sfat Emes asked the question, why is the story of Korach immediately after the halachot, the mitzvah of tzitzit? We ended off last week's Parsha Shlach with tzitzit, and then we go right into the story of Korach. And we do have midrashim which talk about how Korach used tzitzit and tchelet as one of his challenges to Moshe Rabbeinu. But says the Sfat Emes, Yesh lilmod musar haskel misnichot parsha. We can learn something, a really deep musar from this connection. Mitzvah tzitzit hi al shem uri'item oto. The mitzvah of tzitzit is uri'item oto. Is you're supposed to see the tzitzit. It's a very important mitzvah that we have something which is guiding our eyes. Aval, however, the eyes are not enough. Bezelo sagi. If you're just looking, yesh sakana. There's a danger. They actually kashaban. You can fail. You can stumble. Because what happens if all I'm doing is superficial looking at things? It can misguide us and it can lead us on the wrong path. Because there are so many things that we see in the world which could convince us one way or another, but they're not the actual truth. And what does it say in Tzitzit? Lo taturu acharei levavchem ve'acharei einechem. It's your eyes and your hearts. We have to work on seeing things, but also figuring out what do you feel is actually right. But Korach, his eyes misled him. He relied just on histaklut, just on seeing the kashalba, and that led him to fail. Korach saw certain things, and it led him to certain conclusions, but they were the wrong conclusions, and it led him to do a terrible thing because he was just using his eyes. Had he taken a step back and thought about it and internalized who Moshe Rabbeinu is, what God, that God declared before the whole people, Moshe is my Navi, just thought deeper, it would have taken him to a different place other than what his eyes were showing him. We are taught, we say in Kriya Shema, v'samtem and v'ayela al levavchem al nafshechem. We have to take emunah, we have to take our beliefs, we have to take the words of Torah and put them in our hearts and in our souls. It's not enough for just to be on a superficial level, because that can lead us on the wrong path. And that is lesson number 2. Not to live lives just based on what we're seeing, as Korach did, but to live lives where we're working on internalizing emunah, internalizing halacha, internalizing Jewish philosophy, and letting that be our guide, and not just straying after things that we see. Lesson number 3. Tet Zayin Bet. It describes Vayakumu Fnei Moshe Anashim Bnei Israel Chamishim Time to say Eda Krei Moed. These were great people, the 250 people who joined with Korach, and then it says Anshe Shem. Anshe Shem, which literally means people of name, which I might think means people of stature. There's only one other place in the Torah where the terminology of Anshe Shem is used. Breshit, Vav, Dalet, it says before the flood, Hema Hagiborim Asher Me'olam Anshe Hashem. It's used in the people who lived in the time of the flood, in the time of Noah. Certainly not a very positive connection for Anshe Shem. You know, Breshit Aleph Dalet, it says that the people at the time of the Dor HaPalaga, when they built the Tower of Bavel, Havanimna lanu ir or Migdal, we're going to build ourselves a city in this tower, Barosho Bashamayim, with its top going to the sky, Vinase lanu Shem, and we'll make for ourselves a name. And the Zohar says their entire intent was to make for themselves a name. And that led them to do the wrong thing, because someone who's just looking to make a shame for themselves, looking for fame, that's going to lead to mistakes. We have it now by the Torah Palaga, we have it now by the Mabul, and we have it with the people who joined with Korach. Doesn't mean that they were great people. It means they were people who were seeking a shame. They wanted people out there to know their names. The Gemara tells us in Masechtas Eruvin, Yud Gimel Amud Bet, Kol harodef achar hakavod. Anybody whose sole intent is to chase after honor, hakavod boreach mimenu, the kavod will run away from him and it'll lead him to problems. Kol boreach min hakavod, but if you run away from that honor, hakavod rodef acharav, then you might actually end up having honor, because people see you for who you are, as someone who's just trying to do good and not looking for the honor. Then it's possible the honor might come. But just simply being a person who's going after honor, after fame, that is going to lead to tragic consequences. We see it with the Mabul, we see it with Dor HaPalaga, and now we see it with the people who joined with Korach. What was their intent? They said, wow, Korach might take over the Beit HaMikdash, the Mishkan, we can get a good job, we can get a good position, we'll be in the lead. We want to be out there, we want to be famous. That's what led to their downfall, looking for fame. Lesson number 3. We have to live our lives, we said it before, waking up every day, trying to do good and to give to other people. But the intent and the goal cannot be that by doing that and by leading, then I can be a person of shame. Because when that is the intent, that is going to lead to mistakes, that can lead to tragic consequences, and that can lead to the downfall as well, as happened in the story of Korach. Lesson number 3. Lesson number 4. What does Korach say to Moshe? This is really actually startling when you read the words. In Dvarim Tedzayin Gimel, we're just 3 psukim into the Parsha. Madua titnasu al kahal Hashem. Why are you elevating yourself above the people? You're acting with gaiva. You're acting with haughtiness. You're putting yourself so high. Korach accuses Moshe of being haughty, of being egotistical. This is crazy. The Torah itself testifies about Moshe Rabbeinu by Midbar Yud Bet Gimel earlier in the Torah. Ha'ish Moshe Anav Ma'od Mikol Adam. There has been no person on the face of the planet Earth who has been more humble, who is more humble than Moshe Rabbeinu. God testifies that about him. And yet Korach comes along and says, you are egotistical. You are haughty. It is unbelievable how we see from here how human beings have the capacity to take white and make it black, and make black and make it white. It's unbelievable. Rosh Hashiva used this idea when he was talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, how people are able to convince themselves that this army, which is clearly the most moral army in the world, the IDF, and people turn it into we're the worst of the worst. Literally 180 degrees from the truth. But we have the capacity to do that, especially when we have an agenda driving us. As Shlomo HaMelech says, as the Sefer Dvarim says, Ki hashochad yaver einecha chamim. Dvarim, Tet Zayin, Yud Tet. If you're being bribed, if you have another agenda, it literally could take the wisest person and blind them. And Korach could stand up and say, Moshe Rabbeinu, you are egotistical. It's crazy, but it has to be a strong, startling lesson for us in lesson number 4. When we make decisions in life, when we decide our worldview, we decide on actions that we want to take, we really need to think long and hard beforehand and assess, are we acting with truth? Is our philosophy with truth? Because we said before how our eyes can deceive us. There might be other agendas that are deceiving us in the decisions that we're making or the philosophies that we're determining for ourselves. And therefore, you always have to say to yourself, why am I arguing for what I'm arguing? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I deciding what I'm deciding? And to try to make sure that there is no agenda there that could be shochad, which is blinding ourselves, that can lead us like Korach to a determination which is 100% the opposite from the truth. But yet that is possible. And people can stand up and make that argument and be convinced that they're saying the truth. We, lesson number 4, have to make sure that in our daily lives, in our life path, we are not convincing ourselves that what we want is the truth, but rather we have to be searching for the actual truth and to make sure there's no agenda there which can be blinding us like Korach was blinded, and like the Torah says, any wise person can be blinded. Lesson number 5. What does Moshe Rabbeinu say after Korach makes his presentation? Midbar Tet Zayin Hey, we're 5 psukim into the Parsha. Moshe says to them, Boker, wait for the morning, and then Hashem will clarify the truth over here. Unbelievable. Boker, tomorrow morning. Why tomorrow morning? Why isn't Moshe Rabbeinu just lacing into them right now? Says Rashi, the chotam, he pushed it off to tomorrow. Shema yachzu bahem. Maybe they will do tshuva. Maybe they will go back on what they're doing. Give them some time. Give them time to sleep over it, and maybe they will come back. And then we see Moshe Rabbeinu over and over again making attempts to talk to them. He doesn't lash out right away. He really does try to bring them back. This is an incredible, incredible idea in terms of how we interact with those who are against us, those who are seeking to bring us down, those who disagree with us, those who are on the wrong path. Don't lash out at them. Don't go head to head to them. We don't want to have outright machloket and fights and disagreements that can become brutal in nature. We want people to do tshuva. We want people to do right. As the Gemara describes us in Brachot Yud Aleph, we're Bruria, Rav Meir's wife. Rav Meir was having issues with some people and he was praying that they should be killed. And Bruria said, no. What does it say in the Pasuk in Tehillim? Yitamu chataim, that the sins should disappear, not the sinners. the sins, and she convinces him to pray that they should do tshuva instead, and then urishom arina. Because once you can pray and you inspire people to do tshuva, then you won't have the wicked people there anymore because they're alive, but they're on the right path. And that was the plan of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to inspire them to do tshuva, give them time to do tshuva, and he had faith that that could happen. And that's part one of lesson number 5, is this idea of giving people time, trying to inspire people and trying to bring people back and praying that they should come back instead of going head to head with them. But there's a deeper part of it as well. And that really comes out from the Gemara in Brachot, Yud Tet Amud Aleph, where Mishmael says, if you saw a good person, you saw a Talmid Chacham, that Avar Avera, he did something wrong at night, assume that he did tshuva. People will make mistakes. That happens. But then people go through a process of tshuva, and don't judge people based on what you saw that they did this one night. Assume that by the morning they did tshuva. And Moshe Rabbeinu used this as his guiding light, as he said, tomorrow, because by tomorrow, maybe you'll do tshuva, I'll convince you to do tshuva. But this idea, first of all, about how we see other people, and then also how we see ourselves. When you finish a day, and you do a cheshbon hanefesh, and you determine, I did things that were wrong today, it's okay. You go to sleep at night, you do tshuva, the next day, Moda Ani starts a fresh page. And that's the way we have to live our lives. There's always opportunity to right your wrongs. There's always opportunities to get back on the right path. That's the way Hashem created the world. And therefore, there's a few different aspects over here of this boker. Lesson number 5. First and foremost, Moshe Rabbeinu not going head to head right away with people he saw doing something wrong, but trying to give them the chance to do tshuva. Number 2, if we see other people that are doing something wrong, by the next morning, we can assume that they've done tshuva. And part 3 is for ourselves. That when we go to sleep at night, think about the day, take note of things we did wrong, and try to be better the next day. Boker. There's a tremendous power to this idea of going to sleep at night and waking up to a new day. Lesson number 5. Lesson number 6. Moshe Rabbeinu does, while he does try to convince them to come back, he does get angry with them. Tet Zion, he says, Rav lachem b'nei Levi, it's enough already. Why are you doing this? This is crazy. Why are you making all this trouble? Rav lachem b'nei Levi. And the Gemara in Sota Yud Gimel the bed points out the name of Rav Levi. There's another time where Moshe Rabbeinu is told with this terminology of Rav, Lach is used. And that is when Hashem in Vatchana Dvarim Gimel Chavav, when Hashem says to Moshe, Vayomer Hashem Elai Rav Lach. Moshe says, God said to me, enough already. Enough already. Rav Lach, stop asking me to go into the land of Israel. And the Gemara points out a connection between these two. Hashem used the exact same terminology that Moshe used to Korach, Rav Lachem b'nei Levi, and Hashem says to him, Rav Lach. It's enough, because Hashem was telling Moshe Rabbeinu, when you got angry back there in the story of Korach, and you said, Rav Lachem b'nei Levi, that was wrong. That was wrong. Moshe Rabbeinu, this patient person who over and over again prays for the Jewish people, it was wrong that one moment you lost it and got angry. And Hashem points that out to him using the same terminology when he's telling Moshe Rabbeinu, you can't go into Eretz Yisrael. As you're doing a cheshbon hanefesh as to why, that moment when you got angry plays a role in this as well. This is an unbelievable idea in terms of anger and how far we have to stay away from kas. Moshe Rabbeinu is not allowed this one moment when these people are rebelling over and over against him and his authority to lose it. No, he can't. The Rambam says in Hilchot Bet Gimel, Hakas mida rai. Anger is a bad trait. There is no place for it. Ad l'ma'od. You have to try to distance yourself to the complete opposite extreme of never getting angry. Not to get angry, even in a situation where it's fitting to get angry. There are going to be things that happen in our lives where anger is warranted. It's absolutely the case. And we're being told, don't get angry in those moments. Moshe Rabbeinu, in one moment that was justified, lashed out in anger, and Hashem has to point it out to him. And there's a flaw, and it's part of his punishment later on. Anger is such a difficult midah to fight against, but it's also such a destructive midah to have, because there are things that we say, and there are things that we do when we're angry, which can ruin our own lives, which can ruin other people's lives, which can be so damaging. And therefore, lesson number 6 is to stay away from anger, to see how even Moshe Rabbeinu in that one moment is held accountable for it. And as the Rambam says, go to the opposite extreme and try to be a person who never gets angry, even when it's warranted. Bamidbar Yudchet, Yudtet. We're jumping far, far ahead now. And we have the Parsha, really, after the story of Korach, Hashem reinforces the stature of the Kohanim and talks about the Matnot Kohuna, the gifts that are given to the Kohanim. And it says, Kol Trumas HaKodshim Sharimu B'nei Yisrael Hashem, all the holy things and the things that people bring to the Beit HaMikdash to God, Natati Lecha, I've given to you, Aaron, Ulavanecha, Ulvnotecha, to your sons, to your daughters, with you, Lachak Olam, forever, Brit Melach. It's a covenant of salt. What is a covenant of salt? Says Rashi, Kibrit, Hakruta lemelach, she'ena masriach le'olam. What is salt? Salt is a preservative. It makes sure that nothing ever gets bad. Brit melach means this is never, ever going to change. The deal that Hashem made with the Kohanim is there forever. And by the way, we see throughout Tanakh and history, Kohanim that acted improperly, they still maintain their role as being the shlichim, the messengers of the Jewish people in the Beit HaMikdash. Then we have to ask ourselves, why? Why did the Kohanim get this role? We know it says straight out in Bamidbar Gimel Yudbet, Ani hinilakachti et haLevim mitoch bnei Yisrael. I took the Levim instead of the Bechor, and it says Rashi, originally the Bechors, the firstborns, were the ones who were going to serve the Mishkan, the Beit HaMikdash. Ucheshachatu be'egel, but when they sinned in the Egel Hazav and the golden calf, Nifzalu, they became invalidated to serve in the Mishkan of Beit HaMikdash. The Halavim, but the Levim, Shalo Avdu of the Dalilim Nivcharu Tachtehem. They did not stray after the golden calf. They were chosen in place. As we remember, it says in Shmot Lamed Bet Chaf Vav, Vayamod Moshe B'Shara Machaneh. Moshe stood up and said, Mi La Hashem Elai. Who is with Hashem? Come with me. Vayesfu Elav Kol B'nai Levi, the entire tribe of Levi as one, came to Moshe and said, we reject this Egel HaZahav. Unbelievable. The Gemara says in Avodah Zarah, Yudam Bet, Yesh Kona Olamo B'Shah Achad, in one moment, a person can achieve their Olam Haba. Think about what happened in this one moment in time, when the Leviim as a group chose Mila Hashem Elai and not the Egel, and because of that, for eternity, they have this Brit Melach, this covenant which can never go away, where they're the ones who serve in the Mishkan, and they're the ones who serve in the Beit HaMikdash. From one decision in one moment in time. Yesh Kona Olama B'Shah Achad. We live our lives, and on a daily basis, there are moments of decisions that we have to make. We cannot take those decisions flippantly. Every single decision can have eternal consequences, both for the bad, but also for the good. You can do one act of good and it can have consequences forever. That is the weight that is there on the decisions that we're making. We see that from the decision that the Kohanim made, the Levium made, and this Brit Melach, it's there forever. And that's why all of their children, the grandchildren, all their descendants, they are the Kohanim and the Levium because of one moment. Lesson number 7, let's take every single decision that we make in our lives seriously and think about them, but also understand the eternal value that can come from one good decision that we make. Finally, we go to lesson number 8, Yud Chet Chav Zayin, when it's talking about all the gifts that the Kohanim and Leviim are getting. V'nechshav lachem trumatchem, it'll be considered all the gifts that you got. K'dagam min hagoren, it'll be as if you took it from the threshing floor. It's as if you worked on it. What is this talking about? Hashem is telling the Kohanim and Leviim that the produce, the gifts that they get, it'll be as if they worked on it and got it for themselves. What is this about? The Chassam Sofer says, what's going on over here? Shevet Levi, they had everything. Every other tribe has 1/12 of what's going to be grown in Am Yisrael. The Leviim, they're getting 1/10. They're getting their truma, the maser. They're getting 1/10. They're way above, the Leviim are way above everybody else in terms of what they're getting. And says Chassam Sofer, Ela rotza adam bekav shelo, I'd rather have one portion of something that I worked on than 9 portions of something that's given to me. Right? As it says in Mishlei, we don't want gifts. Shechashuv haya Yisrael chelkam hamuat yosem bechelek hamaruba shalevi. The Israel that might have gotten less, but they worked for it. They farmed. That would have been more worthwhile than all the gifts the Levium are getting. Lachein b'racham HaKadosh Baruch Hu. God gave the Levium a gift. V'nechshav lachem shumas hagoren ki'ilu haya dagan shalachem eresheto. They felt, they were given the emotion that it's as if they worked for it. They didn't suffer the normal feeling that you have when you don't work hard for something and it's just handed to you. That's the gift that Hashem gave to the Levium. Unbelievable what this is saying in terms of the value of work. Eov says in Hey Zion, Adam Lamal Yulad. You were born, you were put into this world to work, to toil. That is why we were here. It says in Pirkei Avot Aleph Yud Ehovat HaMalacha, love work. We might fool ourselves sometimes and think, oh, I just want to have things given to me. But it doesn't make a human being feel good. Hashem had to bless the Levium that they wouldn't have the negative feeling that comes when people just hand things to you. Unbelievable in terms of what that teaches us about the value of hard work and not living in a world where we're seeking handouts from anyone. Because the satisfaction that you feel when you work hard, that is the way Hashem wired us, and that is what a human being has to feel. And that, by the way, translates to Avodat Hashem as well, as we have to work hard and as you achieve that tremendous feeling that you get when you've accomplished and you yourself are working hard on something. Lesson number 8, the value of hard work, both in the physical world and in the spiritual world. Let's go over the 8 lessons that we learned from this week's Parsha. We started out in the very beginning with Korach. Vayikach Korach, he was a taker. He was wealthy. All he wanted was to take, and that led to his downfall. Let's make sure that we're people who are looking all the time to give instead of to take. Lesson number 2, why the Parsha of Tzitzit and Korach one after the other. You can't just go after your eyes. You have to put what you see into your hearts, into your souls, and develop the right philosophy and emunah. That is what you need. Korach just saw something and made decisions based on that. You have to think long and hard and go deep into yourselves before you make decisions based on things that you see. Lesson number 3, the Anshe Shem that joined with Korach, they were seeking fame, seeking kavod is just going to lead you to trouble, as we saw in the Mabul, we saw in the Dora Palaga, and we see with the people that were with Korach. We have to be the other way, boreach min kavod, running away from the kavod. Lesson number 4, Korach convinced himself that Moshe was egotistical, the person who God himself says was the Anav Mikol Adam. And you see from here that you can convince yourself of anything. To always think through our philosophies, our ideologies, our decisions, to make sure that we're really going with truth, and it's not a hidden agenda, which is bribery, that's leading us and blinding us in making our decisions. Lesson number 5, Boker. Moshe says the morning after Korach's rebellion, then we'll see how things are going to play out. First and foremost, the idea that Moshe gives time to try to convince the people to do good. We always want to reach out and have people do tshuva instead of just asking that they be wiped out right away. We also have the idea when we see other people who do wrong, give them the benefit of the doubt and assume that they've got better, especially the next day. But us for ourselves, finally, as lesson number 5, go to sleep at night. There's a new morning, do tshuva, and start again with a fresh page. Lesson number 6, Moshe Rabbeinu says, Rav lachem b'nei Levi, because of that Hashem says to him, Rav lacha, the idea of anger, even at one moment, even if it's fitting, the Rambam says, stay away from it at all costs. It is so destructive. Lesson number 7, the Levium get to be the ones that serve in the Mishkan Beit HaMikdash because of one moment and one decision they made. The time of the Egel, that's why they got the Brit Melach, which is there forever and lasts through everything. The value that can come from one decision that we make and the consequences that can come, and also the benefits eternally that can come from one good act that we do. Final lesson number 8, that Hashem had to bless the Levim that they wouldn't feel guilty over the fact that their entire income is from handouts that people are giving to them and those gifts, to internalize to ourselves how hard work is what it's all about. That's where we feel real satisfaction, both in the physical world and in the spiritual world. Let's try to take one or all of these lessons, incorporate them into our lives, grow in our Avodat Hashem, be better people. Thank you so much for joining us. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom.